Good morning and welcome. You are watching Market Cafe on ET Now. I'm Nupur and joining me is Ankita. Over the next half hour, we take you through what's happening in the global markets, and we'll also give you all the cues as India markets open later in the day. Let's begin with a look at what's happening in the US markets. Well, the Dow and the S&P 500 futures were a little changed today, while Nasdaq 100 futures have edged lower as investors digested the latest batch of tech earnings. Now, the S&P 500 rose on Wednesday on the back of a tame U.S. inflation report and tech gains that were led essentially by AI stocks. And in those, of course, CoreWeave and Super Microcomputer were the broad gainers. Now, the broad market index also climbed about 0.26% to end at 7,748, while the Nasdaq Composite added about 0.5% to close at 26,588. Now the Dow settled at 53,770 for the day. Now July's consumer price index, that was something that the market was watching very keenly for, has come in as expected, with headline rising about 0.1% on the month and annual inflation rate landing at 3.5%.
All right, let's talk about the commodities and, of course, how the Asian handover looks like. Well, the tensions are escalating yet again. We do see attacks coming in on the vessels in the Red Sea and Gulf of Oman. That is heightened concerns over the risk of global shipping routes. Iran-backed Houthi rebels have killed 6 people in an attack to cargo ships in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, and that has marked the first reported fatality from attacks on Red Sea shipping in more than a year. And of course, U.S. forces have retaliated by firing missiles at a container ship that allegedly tried to break the U.S. blockade in the Gulf of Oman. So both sides, we do see firing that's coming along, and that makes sure that the oil remains elevated. Brent crude is sitting at $87.95 a barrel, and WTI is also sitting at $82.23 per barrel. So oil remains elevated on account of those escalating tensions. There is disruption in support of crude oil prices, and of course that is seeing a repercussion on the oil prices. But let's talk about the Asian handover and how that is responding to the crude prices. Well, as far as Asian markets are concerned, we do see mixed day of trade that's coming in. We have S&P ASX 200 that's down 0.5%. We have Hang Seng that is also down 0.3%. Shanghai is trading for up 0.4%, 8 points up move coming in. But Nikkei is up in a way 1.25%, and Kospi, remember, has entered a technical bull market after the AI trade is back in action. So Kospi is the one that is back in the bull market and is doing well on account of the AI trade there. Implied start to Nifty indicates a rather muted start, a downtick of 33 odd points. A quiet start is what you expect for the Indian markets.
All right, now going on to what's making news in the U.S. Well, the U.S. core inflation rose 0.2% month on month in July, in line with estimates, while annual core inflation stood at about 2.5%. Headline CPI rose 3.4% year on year. The softer inflation reading eases pressure on the Fed to raise rates as the impact of the Iran war-related energy shock continues to fade. Now, the data gives the Fed more room to weigh inflation against a recent slowdown in hiring ahead of its September meeting.
And Donald Trump says that America has total control over the Strait of Hormuz and expects to keep it even as doubts grow over a deal with Iran to fully reopen the key oil route. Trump called the U.S. naval blockade a wall of steel and said that Iran is all talk and no action. Meanwhile, the ship traffic through the Hormuz has fallen to a near 3-month low, with the Klepper data showing a 5-day average of around 13 transits, about 90% below the pre-war daily average of 130. Iran says that the strait will not fully reopen unless Washington meets its demands. However, the U.S. Energy Secretary says oil exports through the Hormuz are averaging nearly 9 million barrels a day.
Now, Saudi Arabia is ramping up oil exports through Egypt's Mediterranean coast as Riyadh is seeking to bypass growing risks in the Red Sea. Now, oil flows from Egypt's Sidi Kerir port have more than doubled to around 2.3 million barrels a day in August, with most of the crude coming from Saudi Arabia. The shift comes after Houthi attacks sharply reduced Saudi exports through the Bab-e-Mandeb Strait, with shipments from the Red Sea port of Yanbu plunging nearly 90% to 1.3 million barrels in the week of August the 3rd.
And Japan's wholesale inflation eased slightly in July, with producer prices rising 7.2% on a year-on-year basis, below the 7.4% expected by the economists. The reading also slowed from a revised 7.3% in June. Now, electricity prices were the biggest contributor to the monthly increase, adding 0.2%, while the lower energy and chemical prices provided some offset. Import prices also remained elevated, rising 29% on a year-on-year basis as yen weakness continues to push up the costs for businesses.
And Norway's $2.3 trillion sovereign wealth fund has posted a record half-year profit of nearly $185 billion, helped by strong gains in Asian technology stocks. Norway's bank investment has delivered a 9.4% return in the first 6 months. Now, the fund has also disclosed for the first time that a 0.05% stake in SpaceX, valued at roughly $1.2 billion. Its biggest holdings include Nvidia, Apple, and Microsoft.
And let's shift our focus to economic data. Then July CPI inflation came in at 4.45%, slightly higher than 4.38% in June. This is the highest inflation reading in 19 months. Food inflation rose 5.5%, while the core inflation eased to 3.9%. The rural inflation stood at 4.8%, and the urban inflation at 3.9%. Let's listen in to Gaura Sengupta and what she had to say about the inflation print.
A lot of the quarterly trajectory is because of base effect. And yes, inflation is tracking above target in FY27. For us, our official forecast is 4.9%, similar to the RBI at 5%, but we do see limited downside risk to the estimate because we don't see any further increases in fuel inflation. Majority of the shock has got absorbed by the government and the OMCs in case of fuel prices. For food, as I mentioned earlier, as you also mentioned, that the rainfall activity has improved, though yes, it is uneven. A large share of the country is still receiving deficient rainfall. So we do expect some continued pickup in food inflation, plus adverse base effects, which push it above 5.5% in the second half of FY27. But again, this whole inflation story should be seen in conjunction that last year, we had an inflation of 2% for the year FY26. On FY26, on a 2% inflation in FY27, even if you have a 5% inflation, it's not that negative because some part of this 5% is due to the base effect.
And one of the things that have a direct impact on inflation, of course, is rainfall. The monsoons are progressing all across India, and the IMD forecasts heavy rains across several states, with Mumbai, Thane and Raigad put on yellow alert. Akansha is here with more on this one. Good morning, Akansha. So how's the day looking today?
That's right. Monsoon activity is still continuing across several parts of the country, but the overall rainfall situation remains largely unchanged. For 13th August, IMD has issued a yellow alert for Mumbai, Thane, Raigad and some neighbouring areas as well. Meanwhile, a fresh low-pressure area has also formed over the northwest Bay of Bengal near the Odisha coast. The IMD expect that this system would bring enhanced rainfall activity over Odisha. Now, heavy rainfall is likely across East Rajasthan, West Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Sub-Himalaya, West Bengal, Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Konkan and Goa, Madhya Maharashtra, Kerala and Karnataka as well. Now, if we look at the Mumbai's 7 reservoirs, so it remains on a comfortable levels. As of 12th August, Mumbai's 7 reservoirs had 89.49% of their total live storage capacity. Now, if we see at the latest rainfall deficit numbers released by IMD, so East and North East India continues to report the highest deficit at 26.6%. Northwest India has a 10.8% rainfall deficit, while Central India is 0.4% below normal. The South Peninsula continues to remain in deficit at 19.1%. So India's cumulative rainfall deficit has narrowed down to 12% as of 12th August, which has remained unchanged over the past 3 days.
All right, let's move on then. When Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal was questioned on the leadership change in the Tata Sons, he said government will respond to it in due course. Let's listen into what he had to say.
Government looking at the leadership transition in the Tata Group. There are a lot of investments at stake.
We have been busy in Parliament. We will respond to that officially in due course.
Now, India and South Africa have led. SACU Group has inked a term of reference to start negotiations for a preferential trade agreement. Now, the Union Minister Piyush Goyal has said that 5 economies under that bloc comprise about $500 billion in economic value, and India is the second largest supplier to the bloc. Listen into what the Commerce Minister said.
इसी श्रृंखला में आज साकू देशों के साथ प्रेफरेंशियल ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट यानी ऐसे वस्तु देखेंगे जहां पे दोनों देश साकू के 5 देश और भारत दोनों के लिए फायदा होगा, किसी प्रकार का हानि नहीं पहुंचेगी और उस संवेदनशीलता के साथ ये प्रेफरेंशियल ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट तय होगा। इंडस्ट्री को मैंने अनुरोध किया है कि वो कंसल्टेशंस में विचार विमर्श में हमारे साथ जुड़े और उनके विचारों को सामने रखते हुए इस एग्रीमेंट को तय किया जाएगा।
And Adani Group Chairman Gautam Adani has reflected on the group's recent legal challenges, saying the experience strengthened his faith in the rule of law and reinforced the importance of trust, integrity and resilience. Speaking ahead of India's 80th Independence Day, Adani looked back at the Hindenburg allegations and the subsequent US Department of Justice case, which was dismissed by a US court on August 10th. He cited the group's decision to withdraw its 20,000 crore FPO despite being legally entitled to proceed as an example of putting trust above the legal rights. Adani also credited employees, partners and stakeholders for maintaining execution through the period of intense scrutiny. Looking ahead, he urged more than 3 lakh strong Adani Parivar to focus on building institutions that outlast individuals and contribute to the vision of a Viksit Bharat. Listen in to what he had to say.
The judge took his time because he wanted to be sure, as he's entitled to and should do, to make sure that everything was bona fide in this matter. And after his investigation and his inquiry, he has found that there is indeed there was no reason to ever start this case, right? And he has given them a complete chit with prejudice. With prejudice means that nothing can happen ever again on this issue in America against the Adanis. The Indian company should be very wary, right? Because the US agencies, enforcement agencies over there, and those concerned with regulatory matters regarding investments in America, right, are protected very, very, seriously. So one has to be very, very careful about any investments made in America. Generally, Indian companies have a pretty good record about complying with law, but this seems to be more of a the case was so misconceived, and I said so in 2024 November. The case was so misconceived that it almost looked like a witch hunt against the Adanis, prompted by forces which are inimical, which are hostile to the group.
The government doesn't have the absolute right to close the case. It can only do it with the approval of the court. Now, the court, if you will recall, had on the earlier occasion asked the state to satisfy why they have done this. Now, 2-3 things are very notable as far as this order is concerned. The state has, the US state has informed the court that Indian court, that is the Delhi High Court and the Bombay High Court, as well as the Competition Commission, has refused to examine this very question on the allegation that there was some wrongdoing in these particular contracts. So this was a wrongdoing in India. The allegation also was of a wrongdoing in India. So obviously, if Indian courts are not interested in investigating or getting this matter investigated, it would be very difficult for the US court to prove that charge.
Well, we slip into a very short break here on Market Cafe, but Ankita and I will be right here to bring you all the latest cues as the Indian markets open later in the day. Well, thank you for staying with us on Market Cafe. And moving on to the biggest news from yesterday. Well, the Dorabji Tata Trust is set to hold a board meeting today with the appointment of a possible nominee to represent the trust at the upcoming Tata Sons AGM that is likely to be in focus. And Anurag Joshi joins us with more details on this. So good morning, Anurag. A lot of news coming in from the Tatas today as well.
Tata Trust is holding a crucial board meeting on Thursday, and this meeting is on the heels of Tata Sons chairman N. Chandrasekaran not seeking a reappointment as the head of the holding company of India's biggest business group. This meeting of Tata Trust is likely to decide on the nominee who will represent the trust at the August 18 annual general meeting of Tata Sons. But there is a problem there. Since Sir Ratan Tata Trust is barred by the Charity Commissioner Mumbai from taking any key decisions or holding any board meetings. It is right now in a limbo and will not be able to exercise its powers of appointing a director. So all the eyes will be on Sir Dorabji Tata Trust, which will do its board business and possibly even pass philanthropic grants. But what will be very key at the Thursday board meeting of Dorabji Tata Trust will be to see that who will be the nominee of the trust to the Tata Sons AGM on the 18th.
All right, let's move on then. Bank of America is making 18,000 crore or roughly $1.9 billion investment in Jio Credit. The NBFC lending arm of Jio Financial Services, the deal will give BofA and Jio Financial equal board representation, while Jio Credit's existing management will continue to run the business. Mithali is joining us with the contours of the deal.
Rightly mentioned, so keep your eyes on Jio Financial as very big news coming in. Bank of America is making an investment of nearly 18,270 odd crore rupees, a bet on Jio Credit, which is a segment in Jio Financial itself. And the real story is the scale of the ambition that this deal holds. So Bank of America will be investing this 18,300 odd crore rupees in Jio Financial's NBFC arm, 6,613 odd crore rupees via equity, and another 11,700 odd crores via warrants. That gives BofA 26.5% stake upfront, with the potential to reach 50% within the 18 months as the conversion of the warrants unfolds. Also, the post-conversion, this becomes a 50-50 strategic partnership with equal board representation, while the existing management, they continue to run the business. And Jio Credit is also scaling rapidly. So if you see on an yearly basis, Q1 FY26 versus Q1 FY27, the AUM has surged nearly 2.6 times, while the disbursements have jumped 2.7 times now to 11,252 odd crores, while the PAT has more than doubled now to 96 crore rupees. And in terms of valuation, this deal complies a Jio Credit equity value of around 18,341 crores pre-money and nearly 36,610 odd crore rupees post dilution of that 49% stake that BofA will be acquiring. That translates into roughly 2.5 times trailing price to book on a pre-money basis. And with BofA potentially owning almost half of this NBFC, this is clearly more than a financial investment. So yes, we will have a close eye on the stock as this transaction unfolds later in the later days as well.
Right, Mithali, thank you very much for that one. Let's move on to the quarter results that came in for Tata Motors, and it was a steady one as margins were better than expected. The company is eyeing double-digit YOY growth for domestic business, while the brokerages have posted mixed to bullish reviews on the auto major. Avi now joins us with more highlights. So, morning, Avi. Give us more details, but it does appear to be that Tata Motors had a very steady Q1.
So Tata Motors has come out with its Q1 FY27 numbers, and the numbers are indeed good when compared with the estimates, as the margins are better than what the street was estimating. The margins have come in at 11.3%, while the street was estimating a 10.3% margin. They have performed fairly well on all of the parameters of revenue, EBITDA and PAT as well. Talking about some of the con call highlights, the management has guided that the domestic business to deliver double-digit growth when compared on a YOY basis in Q2. The commodity inflation for the quarter gone by has been 380 bips, which is 3.8%, which was offset by price hikes of 140 bips and operating leverage for the remaining 180 bips. They've also taken a price hike of 2.5% starting 1st of July, which will be, they are confident of passing it through fully to the customers in the quarters to come of Q2. The Indonesian order of 70,000 units, which is 35,000 each of Yoda pickups and Ultra T.7 trucks, have started, and they've already delivered around 2,000 units in the quarter gone by. The market share as per Vahan has also improved by 100 bips when compared on a sequential basis, with gains across key segments. Talking about some of the key brokerages, Motilal Oswal is impressed by the better than estimate performance and the 27% volume growth coming in at 108k units. They expect the company to execute their entire Indonesian order of 70,000 units in FY 27 to 28, giving it a target price of 434 rupees, which is indeed a 5% downside. Up next is Nuvama with a target price of 525 rupees over the next 12 months, and they are raising their revenue assumptions mainly because of the better performance expected in the export markets. They say that the replacement demand is coming in after 2 years of deferral, supported by improved affordability and attractive financing options.
All right, let's move on and get on board Meryl also on Apollo Hospitals that will be in focus on account of its Q1 numbers. It's delivered a strong set for the quarter. The hospital business remains rather the key growth engine for the company, with healthcare services revenue that's up 22% and EBITDA rising 20%. Meryl, do take us through the rest of the number crunching.
That's right. So Apollo Hospitals has come out with its first quarter numbers, and they look broadly in line with the street's estimates. Revenue has come ahead of what the street was penciling in. Consolidated revenue rose 21% on a year-on-year basis, with EBITDA margins also seeing an expansion. The key growth engine for the company continues to be its healthcare services business. Over here, revenue has grown by 22% year-on-year, and average revenue per inpatient, that metric has also seen a good growth of 8% over last year's number. Occupancies have also improved from 65% in the previous year to now reaching 70%. And apart from this, Apollo is also expanding its hospital footprints. They've got 180 beds coming in and launched in Sarjapur, Bangalore, while the Gurugram hospital for them also remains on track for commissioning in the third quarter. Meanwhile, healthcare revenues grown 20%, while EBITDA nearly doubled, reaching 171 crores. They also added 151 net new stores, taking their pharmacy store count to now 7,440 stores, while Apollo 24/7's GMV also grew 23%. So overall, strong hospital performance, higher occupancy and continued expansion, all of these three things make this quarter a good one for Apollo Hospitals.
Thank you for that one. And we go across to Ashesha now, and Lenskart has delivered on all-round beat in Q1. EBITDA margins have expanded sharply to 21.7% from 17.7%, while profit has surged. And Ashesha, we understand that brokerages remain positive, citing premiumization and expansion into adjacent categories.
It came in as an all-round beat for Lenskart because across the board it was a very strong set. Revenues grew by 43% YOY, while EBITDA reported a growth of about 75% on a year-on-year basis. We have a couple of brokerage houses. MK has retained its buy stance, but they've hiked their target price by 8% to 725 rupees per share. They say initiatives around premiumization are boding well for the company. They believe growth longevity is top-notch for the company. Lenskart is seeing 4x expansion in India. And with AI at its core, Lenskart continues to target long-term steady-state margins of 25%, which is another positive. Aquarius, meanwhile, has maintained its overweight rating. They say it was an all-round beat, and as against their expectations of moderation in gross margins on a sequential basis, margins in fact have expanded, so that is another positive. Motilal Oswal has also hiked its target price marginally by 10 rupees to 705 rupees per share. They say growth momentum and margin expansion sustained in the quarter gone by, and that was a big positive. So all in all, strong set of numbers, which is why Lenskart in focus today.
All right, with that, it's time to wind down on this edition of Market Cafe. Nupur and I will take it away. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't go anywhere. The market is coming up next.